So welcome everyone to tonight's JeffACE Care Support Group. Today will be discussing support and advocacy at school, and we are fortunate to have a guest speaker, Kim Caputo, who will be going through our slides tonight. So just a little bit of quick overview again of who we are if you are new to the group. We are the Jefferson Autism Center of Excellence, or JeffACE, at Thomas Jefferson University. Our mission is to be an international hub of autism activities dedicated to high-impact research, forward-thinking education, innovative community outreach, and worldwide programs. We do serve all autistic individuals across the lifespan, and our website is available on the screen.
Buenas noches a todos. Somos el Centro de Excelencia del Autismo de la Universidad de Jefferson y nos dedicamos a mejorar la calidad de vida de las personas con autismo, especialmente los niños y adolescentes, mediante la investigación, educación y desarrollo de varios programas para esta comunidad. En la parte derecha van a encontrar una imagen de la página web de nuestro centro, al igual que su link, para que puedan conocer más acerca de nuestros servicios.
Just a couple group rules we want to review. As usual, respect all group members and participants, listen, share, and be supportive, communicate openly, honestly, and directly. Acknowledge everyone equally. In the support group, we respect diversity. This support group is not a therapy group. It's a group being developed to support all families in the autism journey and as an opportunity to connect to other families of autistic individuals. All group members have the right to speak and also to remain silent.
Tenemos reglas del grupo. El propósito de este grupo es aprender, compartir, escuchar y apoyarnos unos a los otros. Por lo tanto, el respeto es indispensable para todos los miembros y participantes de este grupo. Asimismo, les pedimos que se comuniquen abiertamente, ya que los miembros del equipo y los invitados especiales quieren aprender acerca de sus experiencias, sus desafíos, éxitos, y por lo tanto debe comunicarse con respeto, pero a la misma vez honesta y directamente. Este grupo reconoce a todas las personas por igual, y en este grupo de apoyo respetamos y valoramos la diversidad.
By the way, we want to introduce our guest speaker for the night. So Kimberly Caputo is our guest speaker, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining on this beautiful day. Let's keep our fingers crossed that we don't get as much rain as the weather people seem to be saying that we are going to get. I am very happy to be here with you this evening. I am an attorney advocate. I have been advocating to support parents who have children with disabilities for many, many years. Before I did this work, I worked for a very, very large school district. And I'm here to introduce all of you to concepts to make you more powerful advocates and to answer any questions that you might have. That's what we're going to talk about today. Parents who have knowledge are powerful. They can feel confident advocating for their kids when they have knowledge, and in that way, they can be meaningful participants in their children's educational programs.
Y en este momento la invitada especial, Kimberly Caputo, que es una defensora acerca de los derechos de la escuela, de los padres y los niños que participan en los servicios de la escuela, nos va a hablar acerca de toda esta información para servir de apoyo y defensoría en la escuela.
One, let me say something that's not on the slide. Every school-age child who has a diagnosis of autism is a child who may need what's called an IEP. IEPs can start in preschool. Certainly, they must be in place once a student is enrolled in kindergarten, and they can go all the way through until a child is 21.
Thank you. Dice Kim que todos los niños en este país empiezan su escuela desde muy temprana edad, desde preescolar hasta que se gradúan en su educación de bachillerato en el grado 12.
An IEP is an individualized program for a child that has to be in place each and every year. What we know, because of a lot of research that has been done, is that COVID has affected school-age children in many, many different ways. We are seeing increases in school violence. We're also seeing, sadly, increases in violence in communities in Philadelphia and across the country. That is really having a stress toll on kids. We also know, because there's already been research, that reading and math levels for all children, including children with autism, have declined significantly since COVID. Many people think that that might be because of hybrid learning or when kids were 100% virtual. I don't know if there's any definitive cause on why the declines are present, but they are significant. And of course, that would impact kids with autism. Finally, we know that even before COVID, all kids, and again, inclusive of kids with autism, were really struggling with mental health. There were very high spikes in kids with anxiety, kids who were reporting stress, kids who were reporting depression. Many kids were reporting when they're older, middle, and high school, that they were actually even thinking about suicide. So mental health is a big piece of what's going on with kids, separate and apart from what impacts COVID has. Finally, we now know of something called long COVID, which is if someone actually got COVID, sometimes they have symptoms that linger on and on. They can be symptoms of being tired. They can be symptoms of being confused. That is also applicable to school-age kids and, of course, school-age kids with autism.
Ok, entonces nos dice Kim que todos los niños que reciben este plan de educación individualizada que provee el colegio o la escuela ha cambiado mucho desde el COVID. Entonces, esto se debe porque algunos servicios tal vez eran híbridos o eran virtuales y esto ha causado un aumento de la violencia escolar, que los niveles de lectura, los niveles de matemáticas sean menores después de la pandemia. Que en septiembre, por ejemplo, del 2022 se informó la mayor disminución en los puntajes o puntuación de lectura y matemáticas en 50 años. Entonces esto también incluye a todos los estudiantes con las mayores caídas reportadas para los estudiantes que lucharon y trabajaron fuertemente antes de la pandemia. También sabemos que hay una crisis de salud mental después del COVID o después de la pandemia y que según los datos más recientes del Centro de Diagnósticos es que en el 2021 más de un tercio, más o menos el 37% de los estudiantes de secundaria informaron que experimentaron o sufrieron problemas de salud mental durante la pandemia. También que en este año se informó que 44% de los estudiantes de secundaria se sintieron muy tristes o desesperanzados de manera persistente durante el último año, incluso con pensamientos suicidas, que es algo muy grave. También sabemos que después de la pandemia existe algo llamado COVID largo. Esta es como la continuación del COVID, donde las personas se empiezan a sentir más cansadas, tienen aún síntomas del COVID que vienen y van, que están ahí a pesar de que ya no tienen la enfermedad activa.
So before we get into some tips to help all of you become better advocates, stronger advocates, more empowered advocates, I wanted to just refresh and let all of you know that the way a parent is defined in the world of education and students with disabilities is very broad. Obviously, a biological parent is someone who can step up and advocate for their child. What many people don't know, though, is that foster parents, parents who are helping to support a child, can also step up and advocate. Sometimes parents, biological parents, are not readily available to a child. Maybe a mom is incarcerated. Maybe a dad is struggling with addiction. Maybe a parent is in the military and has been deployed. When the child is in that circumstance and they're not in foster care, but an adult relative might be taking care of them, during that time, that adult relative can step up and advocate for the child. All of these people who surround a child can be that child's advocate in education. A court order is not necessary. Sometimes there is a court that is involved, and the court will appoint what's called an educational decision maker. But I wanted all of you to know that there are lots of people who are attached to children, foster parents, adults, etc. And all of those people can, everything that we're going to talk about today, advocate for the child who has disabilities.
Entonces, dice que vamos a definir la forma en que la escuela define los padres y los acudientes. Entonces están los padres biológicos y determinación, los padres de crianza, que son como los adoptivos o cuando están en el sistema de foster, los adultos también con quien vive el niño, estos son incluidos en la parte de la escuela, y también el que toma decisiones educativas, es decir, lo que muchas personas no saben es que cualquier tipo de persona que sea parte de la familia del niño o cualquier tipo de acudiente puede ayudar al niño para que él pueda tener los servicios o pueda tener todas estas terapias o cosas que necesita, así sea solamente un padre o una madre, ya sea que esté de pronto en el ambiente militar o esté en la cárcel, o también de pronto viva con otros familiares que no sean necesariamente los padres, pueden ayudar también, y la corte también los puede apoyar para que sean asignados como la persona que puede cuidar de ellos mientras están en la escuela y apoyarlos en su proceso de educación especial.
One of the things or a topic that Ms. Barrett and Ms. Rios asked that I really touch on is transitions for kids with disabilities. 3 of the very big transitions are actually happening right now. So this gathering is very it's very timely. First, every student, including a student with autism, is entitled to have, at no cost to the parent, an evaluation and a reevaluation by a charter or a public school. If it's a public charter or a public school, either one of those have to do an evaluation and a reevaluation of a child at no cost to the parent. They only have a certain amount of time to do that testing, and that amount of time is 60 days. So we are coming up to that 60-day mark because schools and charters don't have to evaluate or reevaluate over the summer. So if you are concerned about your child in school now and you think your child needs an evaluation, I urge you to make that request in writing. But because we're so close to the end of the year, that 60 days will carry over into September and the next school year. Another big transition that is happening for all children, including children with autism, are transitions between grades and buildings. So, for example, there are many children who are in preschool and they are getting services as preschool students. They are in the midst of a transition into kindergarten for September. There should be a process around that transition. Many schools, charters, and public schools only go up to 8th grade. That means there's a transition into high school for 9th grade. That can be a really big change for any child, particularly a child with autism. And finally, the biggest transition in the world of school is, of course, graduation. And I know many families look forward to graduation. People are planning those wonderful graduation barbecues even now. What's important, critically important for families to know, is that children who have IEPs, including children with autism, have a right to stay in school until 21. Many families say to me, but Kim, my child, we want to have graduation. You know, we have been so looking forward to it. And I say to them, guess what? You have the best of both worlds. A child can go to senior prom. A child who's 18 can wear a cap and gown and get his or her picture taken. The only stop is not to accept the diploma. Child can participate in the ceremony, can get pictures taken, but the parents can say, we are declining to accept the diploma because we want to continue with school services past age 18. That is allowed, it is permitted, and oftentimes it's very helpful for kids who have IEPs, and particularly for children with autism.
Un tema importante del que vamos a hablar el día de hoy son las transiciones en el ambiente escolar, ya que son muy importantes. Primero, todos los estudiantes, incluyendo aquellos con autismo, pueden tener una evaluación y una reevaluación gratuita, y tienen las escuelas solo 60 días para completar esta evaluación. También se recomienda que, como estamos cerca a finalizar el año escolar, que si ustedes tienen una preocupación o quieren que sus niños sean evaluados, por favor se acerquen a sus escuelas y pidan esta evaluación, ya que ellos no lo hacen durante el verano, y si ustedes lo solicitan antes del periodo, después de ese periodo de 60 días y no alcanza antes de que se termine el año escolar, entonces lo pasan para el siguiente año y es más demorado el proceso. También lo segundo es la transición de curso y la transición de edificios. Por ejemplo, cuando los niños están en preescolar, en transición, y pasan a la escuela elementaria, a la escuela media o a la escuela secundaria. Estas transiciones son muy importantes para ellos y para niños con autismo algo difíciles, así que este tipo de transiciones las debe apoyar la escuela y debe estar en su programa también individualizado. Por último, el proceso de la graduación. Es importante para las familias con niños de discapacidades que sepan que pueden estar hasta la edad de 21 años en la escuela. Así técnicamente ya hayan terminado su proceso escolar hasta el año 12 y pueden participar en el prom, pueden participar en la ceremonia y pueden usar su gorra, su capa, estar con sus compañeros, pero la única condición es que no acepten el diploma y que digan que ustedes quieren continuar con su hijo en la escuela hasta que cumpla los 21 años. Esto es permitido y de que usted no acepte el diploma, no pueden graduar a su hijo y lo deben tener hasta los 21 años.
What are some points that a parent can specifically look for when they are advocating for their child with an IEP? Every child is different, and as a result, every IEP is different. But there are some basic components that every parent should be looking for. First, every parent can and should be asking for their child's reading scores. How is my child doing in reading? This can mean a lot of different things. It can mean understanding letters. It can mean understanding what's called sight words, but teachers keep scores in the area of reading on each and every child, including children with autism and including children who might have significant autism or autism also with intellectual disability and or autism for a child who is nonverbal. Reading is a big part of school, so that's something that parents can ask for. Similarly, parents can ask for math scores. It's the same type of assessment, and that information is readily available. A lot of parents don't know to ask, but I'm telling you, you can ask and you should ask. The last part of almost every student's program should include something about how that child is learning how to write. And again, it starts out at a very simple level. Let's first write the letters, then we write our name, and it grows from there. So understanding, because you've asked the teacher, show me my child's writing, explain to me how he or she is doing. Another area, common area that teachers are measuring is behavior. I hope none of you on this call or who are going to tune in later have gotten the calls from teachers or principals or deans saying, come get your child. Your child is so escalated, he or she cannot stay in school. If you are in that position, please know those are not appropriate phone calls for you to receive. Children who have IEPs are entitled to stay in school for an entire school day. And if they are escalated in school, if they are overstimulated in school, and that results in them getting escalated and having behaviors, that is not a situation that a parent should have to step in and become the support to that child. That is the job of that child's IEP team. So behavior is very, very important. Along with behavior is social development. How is the child doing with other kids? Is he or she making friends? Has he or she learned to share? Is he or she isolating him or herself? All of those things are areas that can be addressed in an IEP, and you as parents should be able to ask for and get very concrete information about each and every one of those areas.
Ok, entonces aquí estamos hablando de cuáles son los puntos o las partes importantes cuando ustedes estén apoyando a su hijo en la escuela. Entonces, es importante resaltar de que cada niño es diferente, pero hay ciertos componentes que se pueden usar para apoyar a sus hijos. Y esto incluye pedir su puntuación o puntajes de lectura. Ellos deben tener unos resultados, los maestros, para todos los niños, incluidos los niños con autismo o niños con discapacidad intelectual. Entonces, los padres deben preguntar todos estos resultados, deben pedirlos para que ustedes mismos puedan monitorear el progreso de sus hijos. También los padres deben pedir información de cómo está aprendiendo el niño. También cómo está aprendiendo en la escritura, cómo está escribiendo mi hijo. Muéstreme ejemplos, papeles, cuadernos o su escritura en general. ¿Cómo está él aprendiendo la matemática? ¿Le gusta? ¿No le gusta? ¿Qué puntuación tiene? Y también algo importante es acerca del comportamiento. Si usted ha recibido una llamada porque su hijo se comporta mal y no lo quieren tener más en la escuela, esta llamada no es una llamada apropiada, ya que estos niños tienen el derecho de estar en la escuela y porque tienen un plan especializado de educación, ellos tienen que recibir apoyo, es decir, los maestros y todo el personal especializado en este plan debe brindar su apoyo en vez de llamar a los padres, porque ellos tienen el derecho de estar en la escuela todo el día de la hora escolar. También es importante que los padres pregunten acerca del desarrollo social del niño. ¿Cómo interactúa mi niño con los otros niños o con las otras personas? ¿Está solo? ¿Con quién habla? ¿Con quién no? Y estos temas también se pueden incluir en el plan individualizado de cada niño. Si usted quiere desarrollar una meta en la parte social, lo puede hacer.
Okay, so a child has an IEP. What is reasonable for a parent to expect? First, that IEP is the educational plan. It is informed by, it is influenced by that evaluation. An evaluation is done by a school psychologist, someone who is an expert in the various educational disabilities, one of which is autism. An evaluation report has to be in writing. It's not enough for a psychologist to just say to a parent, oh, this is what I think is going on with your child. It has to be a formal written report. As I said during the transition slide, it has to be done in 60 days. Now, school districts and charters get the summer off. The evaluation report also has to include input from you as the child's parent, as well as input from the child's teachers, and if the child has speech or occupational therapy, physical therapy, input from those professionals as well. Every child is evaluated and then they are reevaluated either once every 2 years or once every 3 years. It depends if the child has autism and intellectual disability. Intellectual disability means the child is reevaluated every 2 years. So they get reevaluated a little more frequently. If a child is just autistic, then that child would be on a 3-year reevaluation cycle.
Entonces, dice, si usted tiene un plan individualizado de educación que puede esperar como padre, entonces es un plan educacional que está influenciado por la evaluación que se completa inicialmente por un psicólogo. Esta evaluación debe ser por escrito y formalmente y debe ser completado en 60 días. También la evaluación debe incluir su opinión como padre, opinión de la maestra o el maestro que vea el niño y también de los terapeutas que vean el niño, si es que recibe alguna terapia. Cada niño debe ser reevaluado cada 2 o 3 años. Depende de qué. Si el niño tiene autismo y una discapacidad intelectual, el niño va a ser reevaluado cada 2 años. ¿Por qué? Porque tiene esta discapacidad intelectual. Pero si el niño nada más tiene un diagnóstico de autismo, va a ser reevaluado cada 3 años.
The next piece of the educational program is that individual education plan. Individual I, education E, plan P. That's where that acronym IEP comes from. Every child's IEP must, at a minimum, be reviewed annually. As I said, the IEP should address each and every area of need that's being outlined in that earlier step 1 evaluation report. This is a big moment for a lot of parents. I want you to understand that just because the bare minimum is that an IEP is reviewed 1 time a year, that does not mean you can't ask for a review sooner. Parents can ask for as many IEP meetings as they feel are necessary to, 1, understand what's happening for their child, and 2, to make sure that the plan is actually in place and working. So an IEP is something in writing. It should outline every area of need that will be addressed during the school day, whether that's reading, math, writing, all 3, behavior, speech, occupational therapy. IEPs can be 10 pages long, they can be 40 pages long as they capture all of the needs that are going to be addressed during the school day. And of course, that IEP has to be explained to a parent, shown to a parent, and it can be reviewed as many times as the parent needs it to be reviewed.
Entonces dice que la siguiente parte de la evaluación es del plan individualizado de educación. De ahí vienen las letras IEP. Y este es un plan que debe ser revisado anualmente. Debe revisarse cada área en el plan. Esto es un gran momento para los papás. Es muy importante ya que deben estar todos reunidos y debe incluir información de todos los miembros de este plan, incluyendo de nuevo maestros, terapias. Se va a revisar desde la lectura, matemáticas, cómo van en el comportamiento, las terapias. Y a pesar de que se revisa cada año, los padres pueden pedir la cantidad de revisiones de este plan como quieran. Ya que esta es una forma en que los padres pueden revisar todas las áreas, asegurarse de que estén sirviendo las metas, de que estén sirviendo esas propuestas de que están en ese plan. Algunos planes son muy largos, de más de 10 hojas, y otros no tanto. Pero en realidad esto no importa porque lo importante es asegurarse de que todos esos apoyos o soportes estén en el plan y sean adecuados para su hijo.
The last step in the IEP puzzle is this plan, this IEP, is step 2 working? Is the child meeting with success? What are some things parents can look to help better understand whether the program is working? First, every child should get a report card. So that can be a place, something to look at to see how is my child doing. Secondly, if behavior is an issue for a child, sometimes discipline is a place to look for information. It can be a source to tell us whether the IEP is working. So is the child being suspended? Is the child getting detentions? If the answers to those questions are yes, it does suggest that the IEP from a behavior point of view is not working. Every IEP and every goal in that IEP has to be what's called progress monitored, meaning it ranges 6 to 10 weeks. Data has to be collected by the teacher in writing on each and every IEP goal. That data is called progress monitoring, and it should be, once it's collected, it should be presented and explained to the parent. Finally, remember what I said earlier, every child, children with IEPs, children without IEPs, every child is assessed in reading and math. And these three assessments, Lexia, Ames-Webb, and STAR, are the three biggest assessments that most school districts use to do that. So if a parent is able to look at a report card, if a parent is able to get documentation regarding any suspensions or detentions, and if they are getting IEP progress monitoring, those three things looked at all together should be able to give the parent a pretty good idea about whether a student's educational plan is working. I'll be honest, sometimes parents aren't sure. They're not quite sure what all the paperwork means. And they will send it to me and we will have a conversation about it. And sometimes I can see things and help explain it in a way that maybe is a little bit more easily understood by a family.
Ok, y el último paso es acerca del plan. ¿Está este plan funcionando? ¿Cómo pueden saber los padres que está funcionando? Entonces, todos los padres deben recibir una boleta de calificaciones o un reporte acerca de la disciplina, cómo está su comportamiento, si el niño ha tenido detenciones o ha tenido suspensiones. ¿Qué sugiere esto? Tal vez que el plan no está sirviendo, no está funcionando. Cada niño tiene metas en diferentes áreas y estas deben ser monitoreadas cada 8 a 10 semanas. Los maestros deben colectar información acerca de estas metas y reportarlas a los padres. Cada niño es evaluado en lectura y matemáticas. Y estos tres, Lexia, Ames, Webb y STAR, son las evaluaciones más grandes que ofrece cada escuela y que le deben de dar una idea acerca del plan, si está funcionando o no. Y a veces los padres les dan tanta información que no saben ni qué significa. Les dan mucho papeleo y no saben qué significa. A veces, entonces, Kim ayuda a los padres a leer todos estos papeleos, estos documentos y les explica qué significa cada cosa.
We talked about the IEP a little bit. Here's another slide to outline what can go into that IEP. And this is intended to help parents understand and give a picture of how broad an IEP can be. Yes, academic needs, that is front of mind for many people because school is traditionally thought about in terms of reading, math, and writing. Behavior, though, is and should be absolutely part of an IEP if that is an area of need for a child. When we talk about behavior, it's important to analyze whether or not a child's behavior is externalizing. Maybe they put their hands over their ears, it's too loud. Maybe they, when they get very stimulated, will start using their hands in ways that are not appropriate. Those are usually referred to as externalizing behaviors. But there are some kids who, when they are overstimulated, go into their shell. They don't act out, they don't externalize, they internalize. Some families use the phrase with me, they shut down. So whether a behavior is internal or external, it should be part of an IEP. Related services, these are services separate from reading, writing, and math. They can include one-on-one support for behavior or for academics. They can include counseling. It can include speech and communication, and the use, for example, of assistive technology. Another aspect of an IEP is the team discussion about whether a child needs school and services beyond the typical school year, meaning into the summer. That's called extended school year. ESY is how most schools and charters refer to it. And if a child needs that extra time, if a child will lose skills over the summer, then that IEP should talk about ESY services. Transition, what does that mean? In education, it means, does the IEP speak to how this child is being prepared for life after school? This conversation about transition should start absolutely when a child is 15. Sometimes I suggest that it even start earlier. It really is very child specific, but every child with an IEP should have that transition conversation at age 15. Finally, another aspect of IEPs is transportation. How is the child going to get to and from school? Is it safe for the child to walk? Is it safe for the child to have a trans pass? If not, what does the child need on a school bus to get to school safely? Does the child need a harness? Does the child need fidgets? I have some clients whose children are diabetic. Those children need to have snacks on the bus or water to keep their blood sugar up. So those are the kinds of conversations that can happen around transportation. And all of these 6 areas are just examples of what can go into any child's IEP.
Entonces ya hablamos acerca del plan, pero ahora, ¿qué puede ir en este plan? Este es como un mapa de aprendizaje, ¿cierto? Es para que también los padres entiendan qué tan grande puede llegar a ser este plan individualizado. Entonces, en la parte académica, que es como la más común, sabemos de que se incluyen cosas relacionadas con la lectura, la matemática, la expresión escrita. En la parte del comportamiento, si es un área necesaria, se debe explorar o analizar más a fondo, ya que se debe saber si los niños están externalizando el comportamiento, y esto puede ser reflejado como usar las manos de diferentes formas o de formas inapropiadas, o cubrir los ojos, etcétera. Estos comportamientos que se ven, por eso es que se llaman externalizados, o comportamientos internalizados que no lo expresan hacia otras personas o son evidentes, pero sufren internamente. También servicios relacionados. Esto incluye apoyo de una persona a una persona, consejería, servicios psiquiátricos, terapias, tecnología asistiva. También el servicio de año escolar extendido. Entonces, este es especialmente diseñado para aquellos niños que puedan atrasarse o pierdan las capacidades durante el verano. Entonces, es una escuela donde ellos atienden unos días en el verano. También servicios de transición. Estos son muy importantes, ya que el plan explica cómo este niño va a transicionar después de su escuela, y obligatoriamente se debe empezar a planear y hablar de la transición desde la edad de 15 años. Entonces, esto es importante que esté incluido en este plan individualizado. Y por último, el transporte. ¿Cómo llega y se va el niño de la escuela? Es seguro. ¿Qué necesita el niño? Tal vez necesita fidgets o necesita cinturones de seguridad, o tal vez el niño sufre de alguna enfermedad, por ejemplo, diabetes, necesita agua, comida, un medicamento. Estos son ejemplos de cómo puede ser incluido el transporte y las adaptaciones en el plan.
We're almost to the end. I did want to talk a little bit about a separate way that children can be supported. And this does apply to individuals who are on the autism spectrum. They may not need the full support of an IEP, but they still need support. So, for example, there are many, many children in public school and in charter schools who have autism, but they are very, very, very smart. They are able to access reading, writing, and arithmetic at maybe even above grade level, but they could struggle with social skills, or they might struggle with behavior. They might struggle with organization. For those children, there's a different kind of plan that might be available, and it is called a Section 504 plan. A Section 504 plan is something, again, it is in writing. It has to be done annually, and it outlines each and every accommodation that a child needs to be successful. So it's separate from an IEP. It is not as involved as an IEP, and it usually does not include support around particular academics like reading, writing, and math.
Ok, bueno, ya casi terminamos. Sin embargo, vamos a mencionar una forma diferente en que los niños pueden recibir apoyo. Tal vez no necesiten un plan individualizado completo, pero pueda que necesiten otros apoyos. Por ejemplo, apoyos sociales o apoyos de comportamiento, o tienen dificultades para organizar sus materiales. Pero son niños que tal vez son muy brillantes, son muy buenos en matemáticas, en lectura, pero aún así pueden usar este apoyo. La sección 504 debe estar en escrito y se hace cada año, y esta menciona todas las adaptaciones, todas las acomodaciones necesarias que necesita un niño. Entonces, como dice acá, se considerará que tiene un impedimento, por ejemplo, también puede incluir efectos de un tipo de medicamento que recibe, y también una evaluación y un diagnóstico.
Okay, this is just what I mushed it all together, Ms. Rios, I'm sorry. So a 504 plan, it's in writing. What does the child need? What particular kinds of accommodations? Does he or she need a little bit more time? All of that has to be laid out in the written plan. If those accommodations are not given, it is the same as if an IEP is not delivered. So it is just as legally binding as an IEP. A student without accommodations who needs them is just like the student who has an IEP who is not getting his or her IEP. There are also special protections if a child has a 504 in terms of how that child can be disciplined, just like there are special protections for a child who has an IEP when it comes to the topic of discipline.
Ok, y en el plan 504, sí, el plan de adaptaciones debe estar por escrito, y las adaptaciones son específicas, individualizadas, son necesarias para acceder al entorno escolar. Negar las acomodaciones o alojamientos es como negar el acceso a este tipo de programa, y esto significa discriminación. También se aplica la parte de la disciplina, así como el plan individualizado, de que si el niño tiene una meta relacionada con la disciplina, no pueden llamarlo a usted y decirle venga por el niño, sino que ellos deben trabajar con el niño. Entonces hay protecciones especiales ante la ley acerca de todos estos puntos en que el niño sería elegible en el plan 504.
So this is the time. This is the question page. I don't know if there are any questions. I am happy to answer them as best that I can. On the slide, feel free to take a picture. I know this is being recorded, but this is my contact information. You can reach me by phone. You can reach me by email. Do not be concerned. Our firm believes in supporting and empowering parents. Every single parent who has a concern, as long as they are willing to take the time to share records with us, have a conversation with me, there is a free, no-cost consultation. I can help families understand records. It is at no cost. And in almost every situation, if the problem is something that a parent has tried to work out and cannot work out, in almost every situation, I'm also able to represent that family at no cost. So I like to say, listen, there's nothing there. It's a win-win. You get to have another set of eyes on your child's program. You have a person who you can speak to. That would be me. We have translators and interpreters in our office. There should be no barrier to us having a conversation. And we help families move forward. So again, I'm happy to take any questions today. And certainly you can reach out to me after today. This is me again. My assistant is Amy Hagan. You can reach out to either of us. Email again, that 215 number is right here. I pick it up. It's with me all of the time. So, you know, I want to emphasize, nobody is on this journey alone. You are part of a wonderful organization through Jefferson. What an invaluable resource this group is. You know, support one another, be supportive of one another. But my firm is also a resource. So you do not have to go through the educational journey with your child by yourself. Everybody needs help from time to time.
Okay, dice Kim que ella ofrece estos servicios de guianza, que nadie tiene que ir en el plan de su hijo de educación especial solo. Y ahí también está la información de Amy, quien es la asistente de Kim. Y pueden contactarla en cualquier momento para que ella les pueda brindar apoyo en este tipo de servicios.
Thank you all very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Knowledge is power. All right, everybody, take care now. Good night.